Hi, boys and girls. Good morning. Welcome back to day 2 of Ask and Answer Questions. Today, we're going to continue our learning from what we learned yesterday. We're going to pick up where we left off with. And the first thing that we're going to do is review what it means and why, what it means to ask questions and answer questions, and why it's important. Okay? After we go over the board over here, the information we have on the board, we're going to read a story titled Smelly Socks. Before we read this story, I want you to brainstorm. Come up with a question you have just based off of the title, Smelly Socks. What questions come to your mind? Don't shout it out. After I go over the board, what I'm going to have you do is jot it down, which means write it down in your notebook or share out, okay? And then we're going to do a read aloud, which means we're going to listen to a story, that Smelly Sock story being read to us. And then we are going to practice answering some questions that was asked of us, okay? We're going to do this story together, but then you have a story that you're going to be doing on your own titled Pajama Day. And with that story, you're going to do the same exact thing that we did together, okay? With Smelly Socks. So here we go. So when we ask and answer questions, we ask questions to help us understand, okay? We always ask because our brain tells us to ask a question because we don't know something, if we don't know how to do something, or if we are unsure of something. We ask any adult or we ask our neighbors what that means or how to do it. That helps us better understand what we are learning, okay? We ask questions before we read, while we're reading, and after we read. Sometimes we have questions afterwards, okay? And we're going to practice that. Just like Miss Barnhart told you today, we're going to read a story, Smelly Socks. Before we read it, I want you to come up with some questions, okay? I want you to come up with some questions you have just based off of the title. I don't have the actual book with me today, but it is on YouTube, and that is what we're going to be watching, okay? Question words. Remember, most question words begin with who, what, when, where, why, and how. Again, question words. They are who, what, when, where, why, and how, okay? And we're going to be practice using them when we come up with our own questions, all right? Okay? We also talked about thin questions. These are our weak questions. These are our beginning questions. And there's nothing wrong with them sometimes, except for it just doesn't give us a lot of information sometimes. The thin questions are easy to find. These are your who questions, your what questions, your where questions, and how many questions, okay? Those questions, again, I'm going to underline these words so you can see them, where they're at. Okay? These are questions that you can ask. There's nothing wrong with asking them. You just don't get a lot of information from them, okay? Because these questions usually usually give you one word or one answer, okay? So you may say a one word answer may be a yes or a no. Or one answer may be it ran down the street. It doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you where. It doesn't tell you how. It doesn't give you a lot of information. It's very basic. But again, nothing is wrong with these questions. Sometimes this is the only type of questions we can ask. But in most cases, we try to encourage our brain to ask more elaborate, stronger questions. And those stronger questions are called thick questions, okay? And with thick questions, these are questions that make your mind think and make you go, Oh, I did read that. It makes me remember, oh, I read something in a book. And it helps me to go back and I'm able to explain how something happened, why something happened, where did it go because of where something happened, how come it turned out that way, okay? So your thick questions are harder to answer, okay? These are not questions that's going to jump right out to you. These are questions that's going to get your brain to stop for a minute and think about it. They usually begin with the why. Like, why do I have to cook it this way? And there's steps, and your parents may explain to you step by step why you have to do it a certain way. And they'll probably also explain to you what would happen if you didn't follow that why. Okay? How come is another important way to start a sentence. That means it's going to get me to be thinking. I wonder also causes me to think a little bit more. What do they mean? Causes you to elaborate, causes you to say, add more information to it. And then your last one will be, what would happen? These are your what would happen if questions. What would happen if I didn't tie my shoe as I walked down the stairs? That list can go on and on. I can explain to you in detail what exactly may happen to me, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. So that's why it's a stronger question, because it requires you to think a little bit more. With thick questions or stronger questions, you need to use the evidence. Remember, we looked at evidence. We learned about evidence yesterday. That means information in the story to help you answer it. They don't want to know what your brother told you. They want to know what you read. They want to know what you learned as you read the story or watched the movie, okay? When they say evidence, they don't want someone else telling you that answer, okay? They want to see if you're able to go back in the story to find your answer. These questions may have more than one answer to the question, okay? So there may be steps. There may be a lot of things that happen that cause such and such to get angry. So it'll have more than one answer, okay? Now, so that's an overview of what ask and answer questions are. So I just told you before we started the lesson that we are going to be reading the story Smelly Socks. I want you to think about the story Smelly Socks. What questions come to your mind when you think about the title Smelly Socks? Okay? I want you to think about it. I'm going to give you like 2 minutes. I'll give you like a minute. 2 minutes is good enough. I'll give you 2 minutes to think about what questions come to your mind when we think about smelly socks. Okay? And then after the timer goes off, I'm going to select a couple people to share out. So be ready to share out. After that, after we share out a couple, we're going to be listening to the story. Okay? And then we're going to practice answering some questions together. All right? Timer is set for 2 minutes. What questions come to your mind when you think about the title? Smelly Socks. Don't shout it out. Think in your brains and go. About 1 minute left. Thirty seconds. Okay. Turn off the timer. Is there anyone who would like to share out before I call on people? What question comes to your mind when you are thinking about smelly socks? What question comes to your mind? Go ahead and share out. Okay, thank you for sharing out to those who shared out. Now, what I'm going to do is, what the first thing that we did was we asked questions before we read, okay? We asked questions before we read the story. Now, I'm going to turn the screen over and we're going to listen to the story Smelly Socks. After we listen to the story of Smelly Socks, we're going to answer 4 questions, okay? Here we go. Okay, let's do it this